Hi and welcome to this DCP Word tutorial. In today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a Facebook 3D photo using Adobe Photoshop. So let's open up our web browser and we'll need to download two images. So we're going to download this image and we'll also download this one as well. So I'll put links to these images in the YouTube description. So let's click the download button and it's off this this sort of street scene here. And then we've got this guy on a skateboard, so we'll download him as well. So we need those two images. Let's open up this folder and we'll drag and drop these pictures into here. And then we can close that down. And I've got my Facebook page here because we're going to test the 3D photograph afterwards. So let's go ahead and open up Photoshop. I'm using Adobe Photoshop CC, the latest version. Probably do this in any version of Photoshop, any most recent version. And we want to drag and drop this background into Photoshop. So we've got the background in there and we need to also drag and drop the skateboarder into Photoshop as well. So now we've got the background and the skateboarder on two layers. On this bottom layer we're going to click on this padlock to unlock it and we're going to rename this background for now, and let's call this top layer skater. Okay, so what we want to do, the first objective is to cut out this skater. There's a few different ways to do that. So let's click on the top layer, and in this example probably what we will use is the quick selection tool. So we move our mouse cursor over here. Sometimes the magic wand is already selected, but we want the quick selection tool. So left click here and drag across and make sure quick selection tool is selected here. And then you want to click on the new selection option here, this first one. This one allows you to add more to the selection. This one allows us to remove from the selection. In this drop down we want to set the size to around 30, say around 33, 30, something like this. So we want the brush to be around this size, and we want to zoom in onto this skater here. So we press the letter Z on our keyboard and we'll make sure the plus zoom is selected here, and we can zoom in on the skater, something like this. So we want it to be quite close, and then we'll go back to we've got our free select tool selected and we're just going to draw over the skater here, and Photoshop will help us to make a selection here. So it's going to be pretty quick and we need to maybe tidy this up a little bit afterwards, but most of the selection should be pretty good, and we might do a little bit of tweaking afterwards just to fix it a little bit. Yeah, so here we can see it's done most of the selection for us. So really these marching ants around the edge is what it's selecting. These little dots we call them marching ants, and most of this is done now, right? Most of this selection, and I'm going to over select here around the hands and then tidy that up afterwards. We can tidy that up afterwards, and around these wheels here. So that's pretty much our selection done, and what we will do now is just tidy up this selection around the edge. So let's quickly tidy it up. It shouldn't take too long to tidy up. What we'll do is use the minus or the subtract from selection, and we want to zoom into the top here. So press Z and we zoom into the head first, and we need to reduce our brush size. So let's set it down to around 10 or 12, something like this, and then we can actually remove from our selection and just get rid of some of it, what we don't want. So we want to get rid of all of this around here. I probably over selected a bit in the first instance, but you can see we can easily remove and add. So this one will add to the selection and the other one will remove from the selection. So it's quite easy to do, and you just need to adjust the brush size when you get into more smaller spaces so that the selection is done correctly. So something like this should be fine, and we'll just add a little bit here. We can even zoom in a bit closer just to make sure we're doing our selection properly. So it's worth putting the energy in here because that's going to really help the end result afterwards, and sometimes you have to just make the brush a little bit smaller for this like finer detailed areas here. So this should be good. All of this is fine. We can just tweak it a little bit here. So we're removing from the selection at the moment, and this should be okay here. around the hat is fine. I'm just going to move to the side here and check down this side. You can see this ear isn't selected properly, so let's use the plus sign or the plus or add to selection, and we'll just select this ear here, and this should be okay. Then most of this arm looks fine, all the way across here is good. Most of this hand is okay, but we need to remove some of the selection, so it's worth making the brush size a little bit bigger, and we can use the minus one, not the plus. So let's minus select this. And this is probably the longest part of the process, is to get this selection right. So there might be other ways to do this in Photoshop. I'm not saying this is the only way. This is the way I'm going to do it in this particular tutorial. And if I find easier or quicker ways to do this, then maybe I'll show you something in some future tutorials, or maybe you know already. So if you've got some knowledge that I don't have, then please feel free to share that. But this is the way I've done it before, and it seemed to work well for me. Let's just get rid of some of this here and just get our selection done well. The goal is to make the selection right, and if the selection's right, should make our life easier. So all down this side is fine. You can get a little bit in here maybe. All of this is okay, and then we can select around this border a little bit better. So we're on the plus or add to selection. So let's just select around this border here a bit more. And this is all okay. This is fine. And then we need to sort this wheel out. So let's use the minus selection. Let's remove from this selection, and we'll go around this wheel quickly. So Photoshop's pretty smart, it understands what you're trying to achieve. You just got to spend a bit of time tidying it up and just make it right. So this is all good. And let's just add a bit of this board in here. And then this wheel we've got to sort out, and most of it's done really. We just got to sort out the other hand, and then we're sorted. So let's just get rid of a bit of this. Okay, so this is all okay. This is all fine. I think this is his shoelace, so we should probably grab that. Let's grab the shoelace. Make our work a bit more dynamic. This is all okay. All up here is fine. Can probably get a bit more of this in here. This is all okay. Let's just fix this here a little bit. So let's use the minus from the selection. This should be okay. So we need to sort out this hand here. So it's just a case of moving between the plus and the minus to either add or remove. So let's remove in here actually. Here. We want to remove in here as well. Okay, it's playing little mind games with me. That's good. Okay. It should be fine. Not sure why it's doing that. It seems to be reselecting here. But let's just do it like that. Okay. So that's it. That's pretty much done. That should be quite acceptable, right? Let's just get rid of around the ear here a little bit. Okay, so that's our selection done. We'll press the letter Z on our keyboard, hit the minus zoom, and we can zoom back out, and then we can see the selection around the skater. And all we want to do is create a new layer and then put him on a new layer. So let's create a new layer here. We'll click this button down here or this option here to create a new layer, and we'll go back to our previous layer, this skater. We'll press Control C to copy, Control C to copy, and then go to this top layer and press Control V to paste. Now if we hide this layer, we can now see the skater. If we hold down the letter Z, we've still got the minus zoom here. We can zoom back out, and now we can see our skater in this scene. And we want to make this into a 3D photo now, right? So where he'll sort of kind of move and the ground will move and it will have a bit of perspective. So it will look pretty interesting once we're done. So what we really need to do is position the skater correctly on this image, and it's worth putting the time to get in position correctly, and then afterwards your work will be a lot easier. So this skater right here, this one here, we don't really need this anymore, so we're going to drag and drop it below the background and just disable it. And let's go to File, Save As, because we've done a bit of work. We should really save our work as we go, and we're just going to call this first file, we're just going to delete this and call it 01.psd. So just call it 01.psd and save your work, and just click OK here. We'll click on the move tool and click on the skater at the top, and we should call this let's just call this skater 1 or whatever you want to call it, and we'll make it a bit bigger. We'll make him a bit bigger. Something like this will be a good size, I think. And let's position him kind of in the middle of the screen, so it looks like he's almost jumping over this, jumping here, right? Something like this. Now what we need to do is create, let's go to File, Save first. Yep, apply this, and then go to File, Export as JPEG, and we want to save it as a JPEG file. You can leave all the other settings, leave it 100% is fine. Click Export All, and then we want to just save it as 01.jpg and click Save. So now we have a JPEG file in our folder of this skater in this background like this, right? And what we want to do is create a depth map now from this content that we have. So let's save this as a new PSD file, because this will be like our scene, and we want to create a separate file which will be called 02.psd. So let's just save that. So this is going to be a separate file we're going to work on, and we're going to create a depth map. And to do that, the first thing we'll do is hide this skater for now. So let's hide him, and we'll just work with the background. And what we want to do is have like our perspective sort of distance, yeah? And the way that I do this, and there's quite a few different ways to do this, we'll click on this background layer here and create a new layer. So we've got this new layer, and in this new layer, let's just call it, I'm just going to call it BG1. You can call it anything. I'm just going to call it background 1, and we want to create what we want to, okay, let's try this here first. So what we'll do is click on the rectangle tool, and really around around where this car is, this car here, let's say about just underneath the car, or a little bit, maybe a little bit higher, around where the number plate is. We're going to left click up here, drag all the way to where roughly where that number plate is, and it's going to fill in this grey color. Really we want to fill it black, so let's click on the swatch and drag down to the bottom corner and click OK, and then we can use our paint bucket tool, right? So let's click here, find the paint bucket tool, and then we can paint it like this. We just want this top section to be a black box, and then down here we want to use a gradient. So we're going to create another new layer that will sit on top, and let's call this BG2. And in the drop down menu here we want to select the gradient tool, and in the gradient tool we want to make sure we've got black to white here option, and then we'll move let's click on our new layer here. We'll move to the middle. It doesn't have to really be the middle, but anywhere around here, and then we'll hold down the shift key and then left click and drag down, and that's going to create this gradient like this. Maybe we want that a little bit higher, so let's click a little bit higher above around here, hold down the shift key and drag down, and we'll get the gradient maybe slightly higher around here. So hold down the shift key and drag down. I think something like that should be good. Something like that should, so it's going to be black solid in the back, and then it's going to fade down here like this. Let's turn on our skater layer. So this is our skater again, and we want to before we do anything, actually what we want to do, let's just press the letter Z to zoom in, and we missed a little bit here, right, like in between here. So we need to use the eraser tool. So let's click on the eraser tool and let's zoom right in here, and we just want to erase out all of this here. So let's click on that layer, and then we're just going to get rid of we're erasing, but it's got a black background, right? So we just want to get rid of all this blue in between his leg here, the skateboard. Let's just undo that. So really I'm erasing, I'm not painting black, I'm just erasing this blue. We'll just do that quickly. Could make our brush a little bit bigger. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect, but let's try and make it clean. So this bit in here, we didn't really need to do this, but I think it's worth the effort. I think that should be fine. So we press the letter Z to zoom back out, hit the minus, so we can zoom back out. And we want to create a layer mask for this. So to do that, let's make sure that that skate is selected. We'll go to layer, and we'll go to layer mask, and we do from transparency here. So that creates a layer mask. So if we were to press the Alt key and click on this black section here on the layers, we'll see the layer mask there. And really we should sort out this little bit down here and around here, around the wheels here. So let's just fix that. Let's press Z to zoom. The letter Z, we're going to hit the plus and zoom in here, and just these little bits here we want to paint in black. So let's click on the swatch, drag down and click our paintbrush tool. It's way too big, so let's make it much smaller. And just this little bit here, you might not see this on yours, so don't worry about it if you don't see it. This is just cleaning up the layer mask a little bit. And I think there was a little bit on this side here. Just here. I think the rest of it is fine. And let's zoom back out. So we have a layer mask now, and we can go back to this layer mask, press the Alt key and then click on it again, and that brings back our image. Let's click on the image itself. So click on this white image here, you can see on the layer mask, the left side, and let's zoom out a little bit more. Let's zoom out. Okay, I've just learned something. So if you hold down the Alt key and left click, then it will zoom out or zoom in. And if you hold down the Z key, then it will zoom out. So there, I've learned something today. So let's zoom into around here, and we'll click on that image. We'll get our paintbrush. We're going to make it quite big. bigger than that. So around this sort of size. And we're going to click on the swatch here. In fact, let's cancel that. We need to move down a little bit. We need to see these sort of grayscales down here. We don't have to see them, but we'll click on the swatch, and then we want to pick a grey colour from down here, like quite a dark one, probably about this sort of grey colour. Don't know if you can see that, but when I paint over him, because I'm using the layer mask, it's only going to paint him, not the rest of the background. You can see it's sort of that sort of grey compared to the background. And we can play around with this grey colour, and that's going to affect that sort of 3D effect. So that's pretty much done. This is our depth map. So let's press let's zoom out and have a look at that. And we need to go to File, Save Our Work. Let's go to File, Export, Export As, and let's export this as a JPEG file. So let's go to, it's already set as JPEG, so let's click Export All. And one thing you need to do is the original file that we exported was called 01.jpg. So let's click on that, and we're going to rename this new file 01_depth, D-E-P-T-H. It must be the same file name, but with _depth written there, and click Save. And then that's exported as well. Let's just close this. Actually, we'll leave this open because we can experiment with this depth map. Let's minimize this. So inside here we should have two files now. We've got the skateboarder image, and then we've got a depth map which is mapped against this image here. So we can see how this works in Facebook now. So let's go ahead and open up Facebook and let's see how well this works. We'll click on the first image. We'll hold down the control key to select the depth map as well, and we drag and drop that into the post here, and this will get uploaded to Facebook, and then Facebook's going to convert it into a 3D photo. You can see, look, creating a 3D photo. So let's let that finish, and then we can check out how well it's working. So now we can move our mouse and we get this sort of 3D effect, right? And we can experiment with the depth map. Normally I experiment with this this gradient to change how this is moving, but I think this is looking pretty good. It's not the best, but it's working pretty well. There's quite a lot of objects in here, so some of it might get a little bit distorted, but on small movements it's pretty cool. It's when you do quite large dramatic movements, it's going to have quite a dramatic effect. So if we were to click post now we can see that in Facebook here. And as people on their mobile phones, as they move across this image on their phone, the actual image will move like this. So it's a pretty cool effect, and you could do some really cool sort of marketing. You know, you could add your brand name underneath. You could do some really cool stuff with these 3D photos. So I'm still experimenting with it. I've only done a few examples in terms of my own testing, but as I learn more skills and I learn how to create these 3D photos better, I would like to share that knowledge with you. So if we actually click on the photo, we can see it more on a sort of large scale here, and I think it's a pretty cool effect. So you can go and experiment with that now and create your own 3D photos. You can use any sort of images. Could be images from your work function, could be a birthday party, could be something personal, could be something business related, or it could just be you being creative, right? So I really don't want to I don't really want to leave this post here because it doesn't have any real meaning to it, so I'm going to delete that for now. And if you want to experiment more with the depth map, what you can do is go back into Photoshop, and it's really this gradient here. You can experiment with the gradient. You can change where that gradient point is, and that will affect the image and the 3D effect. So let's give that a quick go. This is going to be our gradient layer, and this is our black background. So this is the gradient layer, this BG2, and we can go back to our gradient tool. Let's just click on the drop down, go back to the gradient tool, and we started the gradient from around here. So I'm going to start it much lower this time. Let's say around here. So I'll hold down the shift key and drag down, and now you can see the gradient is much smaller. It's just a small change. You could change the color of this person and see how that affects it as well. I believe, from what I understand, the lighter the object in the scene, the closer it is to the camera in terms of it being a 3D effect. So if this person was quite light, he'll be closer to the camera and he will have less movement, I believe. And if he's further away, he's going to have more movement, or it's vice versa. We need to experiment with that. I need to have a little play around with that. But let's try it and click on this swatch here, and let's make this person a much lighter grey colour, right? So we'll click on him. Let's click on him, and this time let's make him quite a light sort of colour like this. And we'll go to File, Save, and we'll go to File, Export As, and we'll click Export All. And this original depth map, I'm just going to rename it to V1, let's call it V1, because I don't want to overwrite that one. And then we'll just rename this to 01.depthmap. So this will be our new version, and we'll keep the original one there. So we're going to have to remake that one. We'll click Save, and now we've got a new version of that depth map. So let's check that one. That's this one. It's much lighter color compared to the previous one, right? As you can see, it's much lighter. I think we didn't quite get all of that color in there. Let's just fix that in Photoshop quickly. Where is it gone? We didn't color this in properly, so let's click that. Let's click on the tool just to make sure we color it all in properly. Otherwise, it might cause a few problems. So let's color them in right. Let's export it one more time. And we just overwrite this depth map here. Okay, so let's just check it's correct. It looks good to me. So let's click on the image, right, hold down the control key, left click on that one, and let's drag and drop that. In fact, we need to get to the post part here. Let's drag and drop that in here, and let's see how this one performs compared to the previous version, right? We've made some tweaks to it and some changes, and we'll see if that's made any visual difference. This one might be slightly better, might be worse. Let's see. So this one I think is not as good for a couple of reasons. The guy moves quite far, right? So I don't really mind that. So I think making him light has made him move further in the image. If we post it, we can see some problems though compared to our previous version. We should have really left the previous version live, but you can see like the floor down here is all broken up. Can you see that? Looks like something has really badly happened down there. But the person moves quite well. But you get this blur effect in the background, like when it stretches out, you get some of this blur effect. So I think the original depth map, we'll leave this one here for the minute. Let's just rename this one to -V2, and we'll take that image, and then the original depth map, the one we made before, let's use that one again, and we can compare them side by side now. So let's drag and drop that in here. We can have a look at both versions and see which one we prefer. I think the first version looked better to me. He doesn't move as much, but the ground doesn't distort so much as well. So let's post that, and let's try and get them both on the screen at the same time. You can see the ground is distorting quite a lot here on this one, and the ground looks much better here on this particular one. So I prefer this version up here. I think this one came out better, but then it's down to your own preferences. If you're not too bothered about the floor here, then this guy moves a lot more. So maybe you can have that gradient. Maybe it's a compromise between the two, right? You have the gradient quite high up. It's almost like a combination of those two depth maps that we created. Maybe use the gradient from this version, but use the color of the man from this version. So you can experiment with that. I'll leave you to play around with those settings. I'm going to create a few more like this as well and experiment. Maybe I'll have, in the next version, we'll do some, maybe some multiple images. So I have 2 or 3 things in the same image all moving at the same time, because that could be quite interesting as well. So let's open up Photoshop. We'll close this. We'll close this. And let's just close this down, and let's just have one more quick look. This one was good, this one wasn't so great, so we'll delete this one. And that's how you go about creating a Facebook 3D photo, and feel free to use the images that I've given you in this tutorial, or use any images that you prefer. So I'll leave you to go and experiment with that. If you do anything good, feel free to you know, ping me a little message on Facebook, and I'd like to share it on my Facebook page as well. Or if you make a tutorial yourself, or you do something maybe on YouTube, then send me a link, and by all means, if it's good, I'll post it onto my Facebook page where other people can check out your work. Okay, let's minimize this. That's the end of this tutorial. I look forward to seeing you on the next DCP web tutorial.